20 years before Neo chose the red pill, a brilliant Mexican scientist was already claiming that our world is an illusion. For him, this wasn't science fiction. It was a rigorous scientific theory he was on the verge of proving to the entire world. But right at the peak of his research, on the cusp of his greatest breakthrough, he vanished without a trace. This is the story of Dr. Jacobo Grinberg, the most mysterious unsolved case at the crossroads of advanced science, ancient shamanism, and international espionage. And you'll want to stick around to the end, where we'll dive into the 4 leading theories about his disappearance, one of which suggests he wasn't kidnapped, he simply logged out of our reality. Jacobo Grinberg's journey into the depths of the mind began with a personal tragedy. At the age of 12, his mother passed away from a brain tumor. This devastating event ignited a lifelong obsession to understand the most complex object in the known universe, the human brain. He dedicated his life to this pursuit, earning a PhD in psychophysiology in New York City. He then returned to Mexico to establish a state-of-the-art laboratory at the prestigious National Autonomous University, UNAM, where he published dozens of papers and became a respected, if somewhat controversial, figure in neuroscience. He was on a clear path to a stellar academic career. But one fateful encounter would derail everything and send him down a far more dangerous and mystical path. Imagine Mexico City in the 1970s, a sprawling metropolis where modern skyscrapers cast shadows over ancient Aztec ruins, a place where science and mysticism coexist. Dr. Grinberg, already an accomplished scientist, receives a dinner invitation from Margarita López Portillo, the sister of the President of Mexico. Margarita, a woman with a taste for the extravagant and a passion for esoteric arts, tells him about a woman named Pachita. She performs miracles, she insists, her eyes burning with intensity. Grinberg, whose rational mind was trained to seek logical explanations, was skeptical but intrigued. He decided to investigate for himself. This decision marked the beginning of his descent into a world where the laws of physics seemed to be optional.
On paper, Pachita was nothing more than a former cabaret singer and a lottery ticket vendor. Her real name was Barbara Guerrero, born into poverty in 1900. In her youth, she fought in the Mexican Revolution alongside the legendary Pancho Villa. But by the 1940s, she had become a living legend. People flocked to her from all over the country, seeking healing. Pachita claimed that she was possessed by the spirit of Brother Cuauhtémoc, the last Aztec emperor, who granted her the power to heal. Her spiritual surgeries were performed in a humble room, without anesthesia or sterile instruments, using nothing but a rusty old hunting knife. She would appear to cut open a patient's body, remove tumors or diseased organs, and then materialize new ones, warm, pulsating, as if from a living donor. Witnesses, including Grinberg himself, described organs appearing out of thin air. One famous patient, the jazz legend Charles Mingus, came to her suffering from ALS. She operated on him, but he died a year later. Grinberg spent a year as her apprentice, documenting dozens of cases. "This is not a trick," he wrote in his 1981 book, Pachita. "It is the manipulation of reality through consciousness." He theorized that Pachita entered a deep trance state where her brain was able to produce a quantum effect, allowing her intention to alter physical matter. But Pachita's most astonishing miracle was something else entirely. Whenever the authorities tried to arrest her for practicing voodoo, she would vanish without a trace. She could disappear for years at a time, and when she reappeared, she seemed not to have aged a day. This detail would become a crucial and chilling premonition in our story. Grinberg saw this as proof that consciousness could exit the physical world. Pachita died in 1979, but her influence transformed Grinberg forever. He began a massive undertaking to study the shamans of Mexico, writing a 6-volume magnum opus titled The Shamans of Mexico, where he blended hard science with ancient rituals. His friends recall him venturing deep into the jungles, taking hallucinogens with legendary shamans like Maria Sabina, and returning with his eyes shining, proclaiming, "I have seen the Matrix." Inspired by Pachita, Grinberg formulated his grand unified theory, the synergic theory. In simple terms, he proposed that our brain does not create reality, but rather perceives and decodes it from an all-encompassing informational grid, or, as we would call it now, the Matrix. We are all just readers of the code, but shamans like Pachita, he argued, could enter a unique state of consciousness and become programmers, able to directly edit the source code of reality, materializing organs or healing diseases at will. The theory leans heavily on quantum physics, drawing parallels to the observer effect, where the act of measurement changes a particle's state. He cited the work of physicist David Bohm and his theory of the implicate order, the idea that reality is a hologram where every part contains the whole. The neural field generated by the brain expands into space and interacts with this grid, explaining phenomena like telepathy and Pachita's miracles.
It sounds wild, but Grinberg was determined to prove it experimentally. In his lab at UNAM, he conducted a series of groundbreaking tests. The most famous was the transferred potential experiment. He would take 2 subjects, place them in separate electromagnetically shielded rooms, Faraday cages, and hook them up to EEG machines. He instructed them to meditate together with the goal of synchronizing their minds. Then one subject was exposed to a series of bright light flashes. Incredibly, the brain of the second subject, sitting in total darkness and silence in another room, reacted with the exact same electrical patterns at the exact same time, as if it were also seeing the flashes. Grinberg replicated this dozens of times, publishing the results in books like The Synergenic Theory, 1988. The scientific community was furious. Colleagues accused him of pseudoscience and fraud. They called his experiments fakes and labeled him a madman who had fallen under the spell of a village witch. But Grinberg was undeterred. He was planning his ultimate experiment, a global test that would be impossible to debunk, establishing a transferred potential between meditating monks in Mexico and in Nepal. But that experiment never happened. On December 8, 1994, on the eve of his own birthday, Jacobo Grinberg walked out of his laboratory in Mexico City and vanished. At first, his family wasn't alarmed. He often went on spontaneous research trips. But when he missed his own birthday celebration, they knew something was wrong. The case was assigned to Mexico's top investigator, Clemente Padilla, a commander with a perfect record, not a single unsolved case. Padilla quickly established that Grinberg had not left the country. There were no flight records, no credit card transactions. Then a bizarre lead emerged. A witness in Boulder, Colorado reported seeing a man matching Grinberg's description who was being followed at a distance by 2 men in dark suits. Using his connections, Padilla reached out to the CIA. The response was shocking. A CIA contact confirmed, "We know who those men are. They are with us." But just as Padilla felt he was about to crack the case, he was abruptly pulled off it by his superiors in Mexico. Soon after, the entire case file was officially lost. A second, more personal and sinister theory emerged, centered on Grinberg's second wife, Teresa Mendoza. Their relationship was volatile. Teresa was intensely jealous and mentally unstable. Grinberg's family suspected she was a plant, an agent sent to monitor him. Her documents seemed forged, she made cryptic phone calls, and was often seen with the mysterious female handler. In the months before he disappeared, Grinberg was so afraid of her that he stopped sleeping at home and instead slept in his car. Then, exactly 1 year after Grinberg vanished, Teresa also disappeared without a trace.
So what really happened to Jacobo Grinberg? There are 4 main theories. The first, he was abducted by the CIA. The agency was deeply interested in his work for their own psychic espionage program, Project Stargate. Perhaps his global experiment threatened to reveal something they wanted to keep secret. The second, he was murdered by his wife, either in a fit of jealousy or on someone's orders, and she later fled. The third, he staged his own disappearance, tired of the ridicule from the scientific community, knowing that the mystery would make his ideas immortal. And finally, the fourth theory, the one his followers believe. He wasn't kidnapped. He wasn't murdered. He, just like his mentor Pachita, simply logged out of the Matrix. He successfully applied his own theory and transcended our level of reality. Personally, after digging into his case, I think the most realistic scenario is that he got too close to something powerful organizations wanted to control. Whether it was the CIA or another group, his work on consciousness represented a potential new frontier in intelligence and warfare, and they couldn't risk him sharing it with the world. But if you want to embrace the mystery, you could imagine that he succeeded, that he found the door his mentor Pachita had shown him and simply walked through it, leaving our reality behind. But these are just my own speculations. What do you think happened? We will never know the truth. The disappearance of Jacobo Grinberg remains the only unsolved case in Commander Padilla's brilliant career. No one has ever been able to replicate his experiments with the same results, and Pachita's miracles most likely were a masterful illusion. But, in a strange poetic twist, Grinberg's vanishing act became the most powerful argument for his own theory. It serves as a haunting reminder that sometimes things, and even people, can simply disappear, leaving behind only one profound question: just how real is the reality we live in? I'd be grateful for any support you can offer. Leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the like button. It really helps the channel.